A woman is on the road and looks at her watch. She complains that she is already late and needs to get to downtown. But the problem is that no car is passing by, and she says that she can't lose her job interview. Minutes later, a car passes on the road and she waves for him to stop, but the car passes right by. Minutes later, an old car approaches the woman and stops next to her while she is watching everything with a bad face. A man gets out of the car and sympathetically asks if she's okay, and she confirms. The man asks if she wants a ride to downtown, that he's going there to work on his car, and he happens to see her on the road and asks if she wants a ride. She asks if it's a ride to downtown and the man says yes, but she thinks she doesn't want to take a ride in an old car like that. And the man calls her attention asking if she's listening to him, and she says yes, and says that she doesn't need the ride, because in fact she is waiting for a friend, that her friend should be arriving soon. The man asks if she is going to be alone in the middle of the road. Someone can pass and do something bad is dangerous, so he insists that she accept the ride and that they arrive quickly in the city, but the woman thanks for the help, but he doesn't need it, he can leave now and goes with God, and the man says he has to go, because he has a time to arrive, but tells her to stay with God and be careful in the middle of the road, so the two say goodbye and the man leaves in his car. When she is alone, she complains, saying that she would never make it to the city in that old car, that she would be ashamed. Minutes later, the woman regrets not having accepted the man's ride, as it only takes 10 minutes for her to arrive, and then wonders how she would get in that car, as it would be bad for her. Soon after, a man approaches on a bicycle and stops in front of the woman. He greets her and she greets him back. Then he asks if she accepts a ride and the woman asks how she would ride with him, and the man says that she can go on the bike seat, but the woman thanks him and says she doesn't need to. The man asks if she's sure, because it's better than walking to the city, and she replies that she's fine and thanks. Then the two say goodbye and the man leaves on his bicycle. Sometime later, she already realizes that there's no way out and that's why she's going to be late, but a truck approaches in next to her too, but now it's different. The car she sees is big and beautiful. The woman is then excited about the possibility of getting a ride with this driver, who seems to have a lot of money. A man inside the car greets her and asks what she's waiting there, and she replies that is waiting for a ride, and the man says he's going to town and he was watching her wave, and asks if she's been there for a long time, and she replies that she's been there for a long time, that she actually has little time to arrive at her appointment. The man says he can solve her problem, but first he has to go to the city to pick up his employees and he will fill the car with people and his employees have a lot to solve in the city, but he goes back there to give her a ride and asks if it can be like that, and she asks if she can wait for him, and he says yes, and says that she can wait, it won't be long, that he's going to the city, he's going to leave the people and comes back to her, and the woman says it's okay and she'll wait for. And the two say goodbye until the man leaves too, and when she's alone, she's excited to know she's going to arrive in town with a big car. She cheers and says it looks like it was worth the wait and it won't be a problem if she waits a little longer for that man to come back. Minutes later, the man enters his office and says he needs to organize things, as he has scheduled a job interview. Then he looks for some data on the person he is going to interview. Then he remembers the woman who was on the road. He feels guilty and tells himself that he cannot leave her alone on the road as it would be too dangerous. He yells for his employee to go to his office, and soon his employee enters the office under the boss's authorization, and he asks the employee if he is having a lot of work, and the employee replies that the day is very calm. The boss then says he was on the road and there was a woman who asked him for a ride, but he said he had to sort out a lot of things and that he would pick her up later, but he ended up forgetting and he's going to have a job interview now, so he asks if the employee can pick up that woman for him, and he agrees to help the boss right away. Then the boss says he will give him money to put gas in the car. The employee says he doesn't need it, but the boss gives him $50 to put the gas. The employee thanks him and says he'll be back in a few minutes, and the boss says he's a good worker and proactive. When the boss is alone, he says that he needs to advance his side, otherwise the woman will be on the road all day. So he looks at his watch and sees that the interview is close, but the candidate hasn't shown up yet. The woman complains that she's already 10 minutes late and wonders where the man who offered her a ride is, so she says it's okay, because if she gets in that big car, she will get the job. Soon after, two men on a motorcycle approach the woman. They greet the woman and say they are going to the city and ask if she doesn't want a ride, but she says she doesn't need to and that she is already waiting for a person, and one of the men insists saying that the three of them can go on the motorcycle. The woman continues saying that she doesn't need to and thanks them in the same way, and the two men leave, and the woman thinks those two men are weird. Minutes later, as she waits for that man and his amazing car to return, the clerk returns and she hopes he doesn't see her, but to her bad luck, he seems to be heading straight for her. The man screams at her through the car window and the woman hopes he doesn't stop near her, but the man ends up approaching her and parking the car in front of the woman, and she says she's running out of patience. The man gets out of the car and asks if her friend didn't stop by. She replies that in fact her friend did, that he will come back to get her, that he will be right back, so he says that his boss told him to go look for a woman there. The woman finds it strange and asks what his boss is like and what car he has, and the man replies that his boss has a black truck, and the woman replies that he actually passed by, that he is actually her best friend, that they have been friends since childhood. He offered the ride and she accepted, but she thought he would pick her up. The man says he didn't know she was friends with the boss, and says it's good to know, and asks if she wants to go with him, and she says yes, so he says he's going to open the door for her. She, with an obvious look of disgust, decides to get in the car, only because she won't be able to wait any longer. The woman tries to open the door from the outside and the man explains that it only opens from the inside. He opens the door for her and says she can come in, and she gets in the car feeling disgusted. In her thoughts, she wonders what she's getting herself into. That car is an old can, all dirty and falling apart. The man then asks if he can go now and she says yes, so he accelerates that old and funny car. Minutes later, he finally parks the car on the city street and tells her they've arrived, so the woman asks how he knew she had to go there, and the man replies that that's his boss's office and that he works there, and the woman says she has a bad memory and of course her friend works there, and wonders how she didn't remember, so she asks if he's there and the man says yes, and she can go upstairs if she wants. So she goes there and thanks the man for the ride, getting out of the car and closing the door, and the man watches her saying that this boss friend is very weird. The woman sees the truck in the office and realizes that it's a coincidence, because the same guy who was going to give her the ride is also going to be the one for the job interview, so she goes upstairs to enter the office. At the office, the boss complains that the candidate has not arrived yet, as she is 30 minutes late. Someone knocks on the door and he authorizes entry. The woman excuses herself as she enters, and the man recognizes her asking if she arrived all right, and she says yes, and in fact she is there for the job interview. Then the boss asks if she is going to do the interview at the office and the woman confirms. Then the boss says she can rest assured that he forgives her for being late. He was the one who would pick her up. So he says she can sit down and make herself comfortable. She delivers the resume for him saying he can take a look. Then he reads the resume and says that she has an enviable resume, that she has worked in many companies, and when he sees that one person worked a long time in the company, it is because the boss really liked it. So the boss says he thinks she would do well in his company, as a receptionist, so he says that from the resume he already realizes that she is a great professional. But anyone who enters his company, he asks the same little question, and will ask this question to her too. So he asks why he should hire her, and the woman replies that her resume is very good, that she has 2 degrees, that she is very dedicated and likes to learn, that she is very easy to work with a team, so he can hope for the best and that she just really needs an opportunity. She explains that at her house they had some financial problems, that now they have some bills overdue, and that's why she really needs this job to be able to help around the house. And she guarantees that, if hired, she will do everything possible to collaborate as an employee. And the boss says he was touched because he knows that this is the reality of the nowadays, and the woman says it happens, because it turns out that in her house there are many people and some are unemployed. And the boss says it's okay, and says he just goes to the kitchen to get some water. He's dying of thirst, because he arrived at the company in a hurry and ended up not even drinking water, and she says it's okay, and the boss says he's going to get the water and she can wait there in the office. The boss takes the glasses from the kitchen and fills them both with water, one for him and the other for the candidate, while saying that he needs to solve these things quickly, that he has a lot to solve. Suddenly his employee arrives saying that his friend is very pretty, but the boss asks which friend is this and who is he talking about, and the employee explains that she is a friend he sent for on the road, and the boss asks if it is the interview girl who is in the office, and the employee says yes, and the employee says that in the car she was talking all the time that she was his friend, and the boss says he doesn't even know her, but the employee says that she said they've been friends since childhood. The boss asks if she said that and the employee confirms, including he says he stopped by her because of that, and she said she was expecting a friend, so the boss asks if before he went there if the employee passed by her too, and he answers yes and offered her a ride. The boss says it's too weird and the employee agrees, so the boss asks why the woman refused the employee's ride and accepted his, and the employee says it's really weird, then asks if it's because of the old car, then he himself says that it must not be because of that, but the boss denies it, and says he doesn't like these fake jokes, and says he's going to solve this thing, and the employee asks the boss to stay calm and not worry about it. The boss says that the employee is not to blame for this, but that the girl is lying, because she said she is a friend of him and he doesn't even know her, and the employee tells the boss to be careful, and the boss tells the employee be calm, because he has nothing to do with it. The boss says he didn't like this car business, but says he'll solve it with her, leaving the employee alone. Soon the boss returns to his room and delivers the water to the woman, who thanks him, and as she notices that he is strange, then asks if something happened. So the boss says he wanted to know something, because he was in the kitchen talking to his employee, and he told that she said that they are childhood best friends, and he wanted her to explain better about it, but the woman says that never told that to the employee. The boss says that in his company he doesn't like lying, that he trusts his employees, and wants to know why she told her employee that she was his best friend, and why she refused his ride when he stopped by earlier and offered ride, and that she said that she was waiting for a friend and that this friend was the boss, and he wanted to understand why she said that and asks if she can explain. Then the woman explains that the employee must be getting confused, that she didn't say anything about it, that she didn't hitch a ride with him because the man was a stranger, and asks how she would take a ride with a stranger like that. And the boss asks if the employee is a stranger, what the boss is, because she has never seen him at all and accepted his ride, and asks why the employee's ride she refused, that the boss is also a stranger. She tries to explain that it's not that she actually thought it was dangerous, that later she got late and the boss ended up passing by and that's why she accepted the ride, and that was just because of that. And the boss says that in the same way that it would be dangerous with the employee, it would also be dangerous with him, and he doesn't understand why she refused the employee's ride and accepted his, and that in his company they do not like this type of attitude, that dealing with lies is not good for him, that in this case she is not an employee qualified to work in the company. And the boss rips up her resume, saying he wants to cancel the interview, and the woman is desperate because she can't miss this opportunity, and the boss says that his company doesn't fit people like her, and the woman says she needs this job, that really needs to help around the house. He says that what she did to his employee is unacceptable, and asks her to leave the company, and says he doesn't have time and that she can leave. The woman begs for a chance and says she's going to work right, and the boss says that on the way to her house, that she thinks about her own attitudes before judging someone. When the boss is alone, he wonders how a person can do such a thing. He goes back to the kitchen and talks to the employee, who is already fine with the woman, and says that she was really lying, and asks how could do that, and the employee says he didn't want to harm anyone, but the boss says that he wasn't going to harm anyone, and what the employee did was get rid of that woman. The company doesn't accept people like her, and the boss says he now wants to take a ride in the car, and the employee asks if it's his or the boss's car, and the boss says it's the employee's car and invites him for a ride. Never judge someone by their appearance or the material goods they have, because the universe can make you to fall.